Good evening. Good evening, and thank you very much for your patience. Welcome to the 2012-2013 Lectures in Catholic Experience here at St. Jerome's University. My name is Christina Vanin, and I'm the coordinator of this year's lecture series. I'm also the director of the Master of Catholic Thought program and a member of the Department of Religious Studies here at St. Jerome's University. As usual, before we actually get started with all of the events this evening, would you please turn off anything that you're holding in your hand or you have in a purse or a bag that might give a beep or a tweet or something? If you would please turn that off, that would be helpful. Thank you very much. To begin our evening, I would like to call on Dr. Catherine Bergman, who is president of St. Jerome's University, to offer some words of welcome to you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you here this evening for our lecture series in Catholic Thought. As a publicly funded Catholic university grounded in the liberal arts, we at SJU embrace and celebrate diversity and openness. Our students, faculty, staff, and administrators come from a variety of cultural and spiritual backgrounds. At SJU, we promote opportunities to respect and learn from traditions other than our own, so that we might deepen our own faith commitment while coming to understand and admire the faith traditions of others. This year in the lecture series, we are focusing our talks on the transformation of the Church that has taken place in the 50 years since Vatican II, particularly in her relationships to other faith traditions. We are extremely fortunate this evening to be able to welcome a very distinguished colleague to share his insight and experience. We hope that you will find the lecture an engaging and provocative experience. Thank you again for joining us this evening. If this is your first time attending a lecture, we hope that you will consider attending other lectures in the future. For our loyal supporters, we thank you for your ongoing commitment to SJU and look forward to seeing you at our upcoming lectures and events.
Thank you, Catherine. In 1982, St. Jerome's University formally began what it then called the St. Jerome's Center for Catholic Experience and what has evolved into our current Lectures in Catholic Experience. Since its beginnings, this lecture series has been a significant way in which this university reaches out to the public, especially our local community, providing opportunities for us to engage with the critical issues of our time. Over the years, we've welcomed speakers who have spoken to us about religion and politics, spirituality, issues in healthcare, international relations and human rights, religious pluralism, ecumenism, interfaith dialogue, and religion and the media. This evening, we are honored to have with us Dr. Tariq Ramadan to deliver the annual Spalding Family Lecture on Diversity and Tolerance. Dr. Ramadan is Professor of Contemporary Islamic Studies at St. Antony's College in the University of Oxford. He also teaches at the Oxford Faculty of Theology. He holds an MA in Philosophy and French Literature and a PhD in Arabic and Islamic Studies from the University of Geneva. In Cairo, Egypt, he received one-on-one intensive training in classic Islamic scholarship from Al-Azhar University scholars. Through his writings and lectures, Dr. Ramadan has contributed to the debate on the issues of Muslims in the West and Islamic revival in the Muslim world. He is active at both academic and grassroots levels, lecturing extensively throughout the world on theology, ethics, social justice, ecology, interfaith, as well as intercultural dialogue. His latest books include Islam and the Arab Awakening, The Quest for Meaning, Developing a Philosophy of Pluralism, What I Believe, Radical Reform, Islamic Ethics and Liberation, and the focus of his lecture tonight, The Arab Awakening, Islam and the New Middle East, in which Dr. Ramadan explores the opportunities and challenges across North Africa and the Middle East as people look to create new, more open and just societies that respect the dignity of all persons. So please join me in welcoming tonight's speaker, Dr. Tariq Ramadan.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your invitation this evening. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to share with you some thoughts about what is happening or what we are witnessing today in the Middle East, and trying to raise questions and try to find some solutions, or at least propose some way of dealing with the issue. And I'm very happy to be here. I think it's the first time it's not the first time in the region, it's the first time in this university. And I hope it won't be the last time, as I have been challenged as to my presence around. So I also want to again greet the people who are not in this room, because there are people in other rooms, and I hope that they will be able also, as they were told, to ask questions and to share their view and understanding on the issue. 45 minutes or so to speak about what is happening in some of the questions is not enough. So, of course, you will understand that there are some issues that I'm just tackling and raising some questions. And in the book, Islam and the Arab Awakening, I was trying to follow what was happening, and in fact, it was something that I was doing in two ways. Every week or 2 weeks, I was trying to write a piece on what was happening and to follow the events, and it's the second part of the book. I was doing this on my website and trying to catch up and to understand what was happening, and then at the same time to try to ask the critical questions. And I think that this is also something which is necessary. It's not only to have an understanding of the events, but to ask the questions as to what is happening in the Middle East, and of course the essential reference as we see it today to Islam, and in which way Islam could and should and be a reference, or in which way it has to be discussed among the actors there and here. So let me start my introduction with to raise some four preliminary points as to the discussion. The first thing which it's important for me, and I raised this very, very early in the discussion. It was 2 years ago when we were witnessing what first happened in Tunisia and then in Egypt, and in Tunisia with the self-immolation of Muhammad Bouazizi, and then we had the massive demonstrations in Tunisia and then in Egypt. Very quickly, as a very positive assessment coming from all over the world, not only in the West, but also there, we were talking about the Arab Spring and the Arab revolutions. And up to now, still, and I know that this is something which is contested and discussed, I'm not using these two terms. I never used revolutions because I still don't think that we are witnessing something that we can call revolutions. And spring is something which would be, for me, essential there is always time to celebrate something. And spring, beyond the fact that we had something which was a domino effect today, and what I was seeing, and I had some difficulties using this term from the beginning, saying we have to be cautious with the way we deal with it. And I took an intellectual position, and I repeat this every time, and unfortunately, once again, it happens that my first position of principle and my first assessment of the situation is confirmed with what we are witnessing now by saying my intellectual position was to be cautiously optimistic, but to remain very cautious, because in fact, when we were dealing with what happened, I was asking, and I very quickly started to ask, what was known before the whole process started? And the media and some of the experts were telling us, in fact, it all started with Muhammad Bouazizi killing himself, and all of a sudden it started, and massive demonstration, people taking into the street and saying, dégage to Ben Ali, we don't want you. And in fact, when you come to the facts, it's not exactly what happened. And I started to remember that George W. Bush told us with what happened in Iraq that the justification of this invasion of Iraq and the lies that were clear afterward, there were no weapons, how do you say this in English? Mass extraction. Thank you, all together. Because we heard it very often. Anyway, that there was nothing like this in Iraq. And Colin Powell, when he was talking at the United Nations, he knew himself that he was lying. And afterward, we heard the story, how much he was upset with what he had to do and he was pushed to say. And at that time, George W. Bush said it publicly, that he was, with his administration, working towards democratization of the Middle East. And we didn't get it. I said, oh, it's George W. Bush. You didn't take him seriously. And this was a very important statement, in fact. Because if you study what is happening and the situation in Iraq today, you can see that there is something that is repeated in many other countries, and I will come to this, where, in fact, the Bush administration, or the American administration before the Bush administration, was for years very much supportive of Saddam Hussein against Iran. And then they changed. And we know that the Bush administration afterward was still very supportive of Ben Ali and Mubarak. And by saying we are going towards democratization, it's a statement where you are saying to the dictators, we are acting against you. Why? Why? To try to promote democratization in countries where the dictators are supported by the administration itself. Why? How could you explain this contradictory attitude supporting democracies in countries where you are supporting the dictators? Doesn't work. And it works, in fact, if you get a more comprehensive approach of what is at stake in the region. And this has nothing to do with democracy. It has nothing to do with the political systems. It has to do with geostrategic reasons and economic power, which in fact in all our discussion in the region is as if it didn't exist. We don't talk about economy, talk about democracy. It's as if you will buy very, very quickly the fact that when the Americans and when NATO and when the French decided to go to Libya, this was because the life of the Libyans was so important. which was said to me by the special advisor to Nicolas Sarkozy when I was telling him, do you want me to believe you when you say that you went to Libya because you care about the Libyans' lives? He said, Mr. Ramadan, you should know that sometimes politicians are acting for humanitarian reasons. Okay, good to know. While at the same time, what was the resolution of, because we have to be serious about this, the resolution dealing with Libya when it comes to no-flight zone. You remember this is what was used within the United Nations to go for the NATO invasion. This was exactly what the Arab League asked for Gaza, a no-flight zone to protect the Gaza people who were under attack. Tell me why it was heard in Libya, not in Palestine. Oil. Geostrategic, you know, the Palestinians have the same blood, human beings, but not the same oil resources. So this is where, when we get this picture, you know, try to see that there is something which is much more complex than what we think. And we have to avoid just looking at the Arab uprisings as something which has to do with democratization. And it might be that there were things that we didn't know. And in fact, there were. And I started to read about all what was known. And many people, when they listened to some of the talks that I gave at the beginning, thought, oh, Tariq Ramadan is going towards a conspiracy theory, which is not what I'm advocating. But there is a difference between saying, look, there were things that were known and things that are under control or not. So the conspiracy theory is not something that I'm buying. But what I'm saying is that the American administration and the European administration, they knew that young people were mobilizing and working through the social network to act against the dictators. And if someone here in this room thinks that you can use Twitter or Facebook and to call for mobilization against your allies in the States, for example, and you are not monitored and you are not known, I think that this is something which is a very naive attitude towards the way you have to deal with the social networks. Remember that the President Barack Obama, when he visited a school, and the young Americans were saying, we want to be like you, what should we do? The first answer was, don't use Facebook. He said it, don't use Facebook, because this is, everything is going to be registered and monitored, and it's a record for you. Don't think that you go on Facebook and it's going to be forgotten. So my point here is, when you look at the situation, you get a sense that the social networks and all this, and you come with facts. And you find someone and the whole strategy of massive mobilization, this was known before. And you study what happened in Eastern Europe against Milosevic. And you come to meet with a philosophy of mass demonstration, with how do you shape this? You haven't heard maybe of Sergej Popovich, who was the man who came with the philosophy of mass mobilization, discipline, positive slogans, and nonviolent resistance. And he wrote a 50 points theory about how do you mobilize people. And he took this from his own experience. He was trained by someone who was in the American Army. And when I talked to him on a Dubai TV program, we had a discussion, say, is it right that you were trained by someone from the Army? His answer was yes, but he had retired. Good to know. Meaning that afterward, Albert Einstein Institute, Freedom House, all financed by the State Department, trained cyber dissidents coming from 35 countries, among them people who were coming from the Middle East. The 6th April movement have 3 people who were trained by these institutions. And they were trained in Serbia, they were trained in the United States of America, and they were trained in Europe. So my take here is to say, do you think that the American administration didn't know about mass demonstrations? Not only they experienced this with Serbia in 2000, this massive demonstration were instrumental to come to an end with Milosevic. And in fact, the whole points here are exactly the same. The clenched fist that you have as something that you had in Tunisia, in Egypt, in Syria, in Yemen, in Libya, was already in Serbia. Exactly the same. The discourse should be simple and constructive and positive. Never talk about the West, never talk about something else but the dictator. Exactly the same. It happened in Tunisia and in Egypt. You didn't hear in Egypt anything against the states and anything against Israel, but against Mubarak. This was the way to mobilize the people beyond ideologies and parties. And this is what it didn't work in Algeria because the leading force were political parties. So if you want mass demonstration, go beyond. What I'm saying here is in 2008, the American embassy and the ambassador was a woman who was in Cairo. She sent, and this was afterward revealed by WikiLeaks, she sent a message to the American administration, the State Department, talking about these young people who are trained to get rid of Mubarak. This was in 2008, 3 years before. In 2011, 1.5 months before the whole process started, you had a very important meeting with all the cyber dissidents in Budapest. 9 of them are going to be found again in Tunisia and in Egypt. They were trained and they were gathering the first network of Middle Eastern cyber dissidents. Who was organizing it? Google. With whom State Department and European ambassadors were there. So, does it mean that it's all under control? No. But the push towards democratization in the Middle East was a necessity, not for political reasons, because, in fact, the dictators were the allies, but it's for other reasons. And this is where I'm inviting you to look at the other side of the picture. And the other side of the picture is the dictators with the end of the Ben Ali regime and the coming of Gamal Mubarak as the son of Mubarak was very complicated in economic terms. Why? Because in all this region, Gaddafi said it to the West, if you carry on your policy, we are going to deal with China. And the BRIC countries were now very instrumental. So in fact, it's for economic reasons that they had to change the political attitudes towards the Middle East, because they were losing ground. In less than 7 years, the Chinese presence in economic terms in the region was multiplied by 8. 8. Very powerful. India, with millions of migrants in the region, was now settling and being very instrumental in the region. Add to this Brazil, add to this Russia, add to this Malaysia, add to this Turkey, add to this South Africa. So the new actors in political terms were in fact challenging the power of the West in the region. So I would say that this simplistic perception that it's all about democracy and the people took into the street and we want to celebrate democracy, we might have to be less naive. But at the same time, and this is why I'm against anything which has to do with the conspiracy theory, they were pushed, but it was quite clear that this couldn't be under a complete control. And the best example is what happened in Syria. In fact, in Syria, Neither the American administration nor the European administrations were expecting the people to take into the street the way they did. And remember, for 8 months, the American administration and the European administration were asking Bashar al-Assad, reform your regime. So stay, but reform it. Even the Turkish prime minister was saying this. They're saying they were not taking a clear stand on this. It took them 8 months to change because, in fact, they didn't expect the people to. They know that Bashar al-Assad is it's a very tough regime. He's a dictator. And he's following in the footsteps of his father. His father was a dictator, and his uncle was, in fact, someone that was killing, all the opponents and all the opposition. He was just someone that is, he was even in Geneva. And I don't know how you can respect someone like this, Rafat al-Assad. So this is a family that has a very, very strong record and being very tough. Who could have expected the people to take into the street in such a way? And in fact, the American administration and the European administration, they didn't have a link with the opposition. They didn't know who to trust. Mainly because within the opposition, the leading force were, again, Islamist and Muslim Brotherhood. So they were trying to find with whom we can deal. So it took time, and then they changed the position and they said, now it's over, we have to stop. Why? Because it's a new way to control the situation, and this is why now they are saying to Bashar al-Assad that he has to leave. But I will come to this. So if you come with all this in mind, and you have a bigger picture, this is why we start being very cautious. What is really happening and how things could evolve? Who are the actors? And in which way this is going to evolve, and we'll have democracies in the Middle East. This is the big question, and these are the big challenges. This is why, having studied all this, I took this intellectual position by saying cautiously optimistic, let us understand, and then acknowledging something which is very, very important in the Arab world. Because as you know, the Arab world and the Middle East, this is where for the last 30 years, the only region in the world where this was a bad status quo. Nothing was moving, dictators, it was moving in South America, in Latin America, it has changed and evolved in Africa, but not in the Middle East. And this is, in fact, for me, the greatest element in the whole process is that what I call this awakening. And the awakening is people, whatever is done from behind the scene and push the people having the sense that they can change, they can make it, that they have power in the streets and they can resist dictatorships. And this is an intellectual revolution. So the only revolution I see now is an intellectual revolution, not to be passive and say we don't accept and we are going to mobilize the people. And this awakening is something which could have an impact in the coming future if and only if you go from something which is not to be united against, but to be able to be united for. Which the power of these movements was at the same time the weakness of the movement. The power was no ideologies, no divisions, just united against the dictator. But when the dictator is no longer here, why and how are we going to be united? What is the vision? What is the project? No, nothing clear. Divisions came just after it. So this is where we should try to identify, the areas or the elements of power, and also understand the weaknesses of the whole movement. And these are the important questions that we have to ask. And this is why, with all these elements, I think that we should avoid the wrong questions, and we have to identify the true challenges. And there are some wrong questions. We keep on asking the qualification of the state and in which way it's going to be democratic and not. And it's as if you can have a democracy where you have a destabilized economy, no education, and say, okay, corruption, say, where is democracy? So I'm sorry, with a corrupt regime is even a contradiction in terms to speak about the democratic process if you have corruption everywhere. And say, okay, if we deal with the army, how are we going to have a democratic model with the army? So if you are going towards a democratic model, the army should not be within the civil state, which today is not the case in Egypt. From behind the scene, the army is very powerful and still very powerful. And when I'm saying the army is powerful, I mean by this that they are powerful in economic terms, in political terms, and in foreign policy. Which is a lot, which is a lot. So all this together means that you have to be very cautious about our assessment. Let me come to a few elements that we have to raise and perspectives, and then come to the true challenges. What I am trying to deal with the wrong questions and coming to the right question, and then to the real challenges that we are facing in the Middle East and in this new Middle East. What I was saying is that the wrong question is, how are we going to get democratic models? And that's it, and we stop here. So the question that I had so many times over the last few years, almost 30 years now, Tariq Ramadan, tell us, is there a contradiction between Islam and democracy? Silly question. Dangerous question. Keeping on repeating as if there is something which is intrinsically rooted in Islam that is keeping this question coming. Are the Muslims able to be democrats? And the problem is the perception of Islam and the wrong question here, because anyone who is looking at what is happening in the Muslim majority countries, asking this question means that he or she is reducing Islam to the Arabs. So the special advisor to Erdogan, once when we were in this alliance of civilization, was saying, stop with the silly questions. The question is not if the Arabs are ready for democracy. It might be the other way around, that we have to ask the West, are you ready for the Arabs to be democrats? That's a good question. Because you deal with dictators and you ask the question when these dictators don't suit your policy. You don't have a problem, and you know, I don't know if you have seen this, I was with Charlie Rose recently in a program. I'm saying, no, the Americans are promoting democracy in the Middle East and this is what they want. I say, are you sure? I say, yes. Yeah. I say, I'm sorry, if you are for democracy in the Middle East, you start with Saudi Arabia. And then he stopped and said, you know, it's case per case. Ah, okay, democracy, it's case per case. It depends when you support it. The problem is it's not about democracy, it's about interest and geostrategic approaches. And this is where, in this, I think that if you look at the situation here, the question is not, the wrong question is about the political system and democratization. Is it possible? And is there something in Islam that make it impossible for the Muslims to be democrats? Nothing. Quite the opposite. Quite the opposite. That all the principles that we can find in Islam are supporting the fact that we have to go towards something which is a bottom-up way of dealing with delegation of authority. We have this. So it's not, the problem is not Islam. The problem lies somewhere else, where we have to understand that dealing with dictators sometimes is something that was protected from outside and protected from within. And you know how the dictators were putting it for years. They were saying, better us, dictators, than them, fundamentalists and people who are against the West. And we voted and we accepted this for years. The French were keeping and repeating this, and the American administrations was repeating, and many scholars in the West were repeating this. We better deal with these dictators. At least they are controlling the country, and we are protected from the Islamists and the fundamentalists and the extremists. You heard all this rhetoric. But when we come to what happened now and we try to understand, this comprehensive approach is necessary when it comes to understand the very quick changes that we had in the Middle East. And in fact, in political terms, it was a status quo. In economic terms, it was a revolution. In fact, if you were to study the reality of the relationship between the country and the new actors, you had a revolution in economic terms. And the countries that were losing ground were the Western countries, and this shift towards the East, towards Russia, China, and other countries. So in order to gain or to regain this economic space, to push towards democracy and at the same time to open the market. You want an example? You are not following enough what is happening in Iraq today. We were told that all this was to liberate the country from Saddam Hussein. In fact, today, now, what is happening in Iraq is a complete destabilized political system, where you have corruption, when you have division, when the Shia are against the Sunni, where there is no protection except for a small elite of people getting the money. And we are told is more democratic, yes, but in fact it's a complete destabilized political system. What is only protected is the economic interests. Iraq is protecting the economic interests of their allies, first the Americans, and then the British, and then the European countries. Get it right. Destabilized in political terms, open in economic terms. They came back to the source. Second example, Libya. Libya, we thought with this intervention, they were freeing the country. Gaddafi was killed. And then what we have now is a country which is going towards more democracy. Not true. Tribalism, divisions within, no security in political terms. This is the reality. What is secured? Economic resources and oil resources. Under control now. 35% of the production, this was a contract that was signed before Gaddafi was gone by the opposition with the French transnational corporation. 35% of the exportation was to go to France. This is confirmed now. So the country is completely destroyed in political terms. Nothing is stable, completely fragile, but the economic sector is protected. Come to Tunisia and come to Egypt. Two countries. I was thinking at the beginning that Tunisia is going to be the great model of this, movement towards democratization. What is happening now? Completely destabilized in political terms. And it was with one killing of one person from the opposition, we show how much the political equilibrium and balance was fragile. This was last month. And now they changed the government and we have a destabilized country. It's the same in Egypt. What is protected again? Tunisia came back to what? To the Bretton Woods institutions, the World Bank and the IMF. These are two economies under complete control and under assisted economy. In fact, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 examples of countries that are completely destabilized in political terms but open in economic terms and coming back to what they should be within the strategy of the West. So if you look at this in political terms, you are lost. If you look at it in economic terms, you can think that it might be that it's more cynical than this. And I'm going very far on this. Because, you know, I was once on the BBC and I was asked, do you support intervention in Libya? It was just before. And I was dealing with the situation, and it's difficult. Because, you know, when Gaddafi said, I'm going to kill you, he meant it. He was going to kill the people in Benghazi. He was. And then you say, okay, can we leave this? Can we let him do this? And there was this, you know, discussion about the no-flight zone, and I was supporting this, but not the intervention. So you have a conflict in the way you deal with, you know, autonomy, and Gaddafi was a dictator. Was it just to invade? No. Was it necessary to prevent? Yes. So we have to find a way here. And then you come to Syria. As much as I didn't want this intervention in Libya, you deal with Syria and you see that nothing is done. And some of the people in the opposition are saying to the American, you don't want to do anything. You went to Libya, but you are not doing anything with Syria. And we are asked, you don't want the people to, you said no to Libya, and now you want something in Syria. You are not consistent. And it's true that it's difficult to be consistent here. So I really think that we should not promote or ask for a foreign intervention in Syria, but something should be done to stop what is happening. And in fact, you heard China and Russia saying that they don't want the scenario of Libya to start again because they lost a lot. You should know this, that the country which lost the more in the whole process in Libya is China first, because he was starting to deal with them with his national corporation. This was Gaddafi, and he said it, and he wrote it, and he started. So not to promote an intervention and at the same time to say, do something to stop the dictator. So in all this confused situation, you need to have a principled approach. And the principled approach, a dictator should we should get rid of the dictators. How? This is the problem. But now you come to something which is very problematic and worrying. Russia and China, they don't want the scenario, the Libyan scenario, to be repeated. And the American administration, as well as the European administration, they took 8 months to find people with the opposition to deal with. And then what we have is 170 people being killed every day, and more than 1 million refugees abroad. And nothing is done, and we know this. And my take on this is, in political terms and in humanitarian terms, is a catastrophe. But I'm sorry to say, with a great deal of cynicism, in geostrategic terms and economic terms, good business. It works. This is what the State Department is calling low-intensity conflict. In a region, in one country, secured, and it destabilizes the region. It gives you an opportunity to sell weapons, to produce more, and to sell, and to destabilize the country, and in fact also to have access to the market. And my take on this, and it's very cynical, but I can't understand the situation in another way. There is an agreement between Russia and China and the States and the Europeans. There is an agreement not to agree. And in fact, to let it go like this. It destabilized the whole Middle East. No way, and more than this, it makes something which is one of the main challenges for the region in the coming years. It just deepen the divide between the Sunni and the Shia in the region. And this is a catastrophe, because this is where the Middle East is going to be very weak. And you can see it now. The people who are supporting Bashar are mainly Shia, and the people who are supporting the resistance are mainly Sunni. And you have Iran, Lebanon, and Syria versus Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, and the Sunni. And this is why we are not very much talking on the Sunni side about what is happening in Bahrain. Because we are told, you know, Bahrain is, these are Sunni against Shia or Shia against Sunni, which is wrong. It's where people against the dictators. But this is the way you transform the whole story into something which is sectarianism, and it's dangerous. One of the main challenges. So when you come with this, you understand we might have to reassess, and not only to talk about politics, but to understand that we are dealing here with economic interest. Now, there is something which is happening in the new Middle East, coming with this, with what I was saying this. So this is also something which is coming from outside. It's strategies coming from the old allies. But there are challenges within. And the first one is one of the biggest one, as I said, is the divide between Sunni and Shia. And then there is a second one, which is the internal divisions between different trends in Muslim-majority countries. It's what is happening between the reformists, the legalists, the Salafi, and these divisions, all these divisions are going to have a very important role. For example, we didn't get it, but when the Salafi got 24%, it was 22% of the votes in the election, the parliamentary election, many people in the West were saying, oh, the Islamists are getting 20 plus 40% for the Muslim Brotherhood, so it's 60% for the Islamists. And we thought they were working together. But in fact, it was not the case. The Salafi are not here to support the Muslim Brotherhood, but to destabilize the whole religious reference. And they are pushed from abroad. Rand Corporation just published a report saying $80 million were put by Salafi organizations in Egypt and some of them in Tunisia to push this movement. Who are these Salafi? The Salafi are historically the first allies of the American strategy in the region with the Saudi government. And this is once again very interesting. We don't care about women's rights. We don't care about freedom there. The only thing is, as long as the geostrategic interest and the oil interests are protected, we deal with Salafi. And in fact, the Salafi, the way we are talking about them today, are Islamists in a way. But they are Islamists saying democracy is not Islamic. And they are saying it. In Egypt, the leader of Hizb al-Nur was saying, for us, democracy is not halal or haram, it's kufr. He said it before he was involved into the process. So it's quite strange to listen to someone who is saying, I'm going to be involved in kufr as a Salafi. Kufr is denying the very existence of truth and God and the principles of Islam. So we need also to get something which is a sense of this complexity where they are playing with divisions within, and who is pushing some of these trends from within, because they are pushed from within, and from abroad. Why this destabilization? When I was meeting the president, the Tunisian president, Monsef Marzouki, he told me, we have a big problem now. We are seeing these groups that are coming, we didn't know. We knew that the Salafi were there, but so powerful, entering into the political arena the way they are doing it, who is pushing these people? Why? To destabilize the country. So we have now internal divisions as to the religious reference, and this is also something which is important, willing it or not, in the Middle East, the Islamic reference is going to play a tremendous role in the future. Now the problem is which kind of reference and which kind of interpretations. You might say, no, you have to promote secularism and all this, that's fine. I don't have a problem with promoting separation of authority. But if you do this by imposing the fact that Islam should not be part of the whole discussion, you are dreaming. It's not going to happen. So the point is which type of reference, much more than if the reference should be there. The third thing that we have to add in the whole discussion here. So the first, as I said, is the relationship between the political and the economic interest. The second is about the divisions. These are challenges that we have. These are the true questions that we have to ask, and the true challenges also as to the right question, how do we deal with this? But there is another thing, which is a very important question that we have to ask, which has to do with, have you seen the people, the way they are acting in the different countries? If you listen to what is said in Tunisia, the Tunisian actors are working for the Tunisian country and within the Tunisian country. In fact, we talk about the spring, but these are very nationalistic endeavors. It's very much about this. And we know that a country alone is not going to make it. If we have a front, transnational movement of people working together, this is something else. But here, Egyptians for Egypt, Tunisians for Tunisia. It's completely scattered and divided and very nationalistic, very, very narrow-minded in we are liberating the country in political terms. But as you know, there will be no democratization in these countries if there is no economic stability in the region. So we talk about an Arab Spring, but in fact, these are nationalistic uprisings, not an Arab Spring. There is no connection here between the trends. And this South-South relationship and transnational relationship is not there. Every single country is talking straight to the Americans, to the World Bank, to the IMF, and not with the others. And you can't resist. It's not possible. You are just negotiating your submission to the institutions. This is what is happening. And this is a big challenge. No real transnational element here. Now, to come to my second part, which is at the same time my conclusion, if we come now to the true challenges beyond what we are seeing. When I went to Tunisia, and I was talking there, I was trapped into this big polarization between secularists and Islamists. And I was talking to the actors at the grassroots level, and some of them are leaders. They were saying, oh, this is all coming from the West. They are polarizing the debate, and they are pushing us against one another, the secularists against the Islamists. And in fact, I told them, no, I'm sorry, it's not coming from Washington. It's coming straight from Tunis. It's coming from you. And this is the reality now. That the reality is a power struggle between two trends that are presented and presenting themselves into a polarized discussion, which is in fact a trap and is not going to help the countries to get liberated. Because the two groups or the two trends are now in a position, willing it or not, it's not something that is coming from a decision that they can take, and sometimes they are forced to take this decision or they are accepting it, is that you listen to the secularists. What they are saying about the Islamists is, you are fundamentalist, you are dangerous, you are background, and we are progressive. So we are right and you are wrong. On the other side, the Islamists are saying, you are sold out, you are westernized, you are following the West, and we are resisting and protecting the country with our culture and religion. And in fact, we end up having a discussion on what is your legitimacy, in which way you are legitimizing your political involvement is by being against the other. Not by presenting a vision, not with a political vision for the future, but by being against them. So we have two groups in this polarization, avoiding the true questions and talking about the others as we are here because we are more legitimate. But to be more legitimate than the other doesn't mean that you are politically efficient. And in fact, it might be exactly the opposite. So we end up discussing this polarization. This is the danger. So the true question here is not to decide between this and that. And this is why I like the position of some of the people in Tunisia, among them Monsef Marzouki from the Congress and the people from El Takatul saying, willing it or not, the Islamist and political Islamist part of the is legitimate in the political landscape in the country. Why? Because they are getting 30% of the people voting for them. So if you are Democrats, you have to acknowledge the fact. You cannot say, remove them from the picture. Like it or not, you may not like the Muslim Brotherhood, but when 30% of the people are voting for them, keep quiet and just discuss. But you cannot remove people who are elected. You cannot say the people don't know for whom they are voting, and as some people were saying, is that we have to educate the people to vote in a better way. Okay, go and patronize now. And sometimes you hear this coming from a country like Italy. Not to talk about Canada. Anyway. The point here is we have to deal with this, and then beyond the whole process, it's to find a way to go beyond this polarization. And to do this, it's true that we need to come to the discussion about the qualification of the state. And you can see now that the Islamists everywhere, the legalists and the reformists, not the Salafi are still talking about an Islamic state, but all the Islamist trends are talking about a civil state with Islamic reference. Saying that they are moving. Now you can say, okay, it's maybe pragmatism, they are changing, it's a strategy. It might be. It might be. We said this about Erdogan 12 years ago. They say, oh, he's an Islamist, but he knows how to play. We'll see what he's going to do. Turkey is going to be an Islamist country. 12 years later, he's the most successful in economic terms, and now it's the European Union knocking at his door, say, we might need you. And now Turkey is needed. But Turkey has changed its strategy going towards south and east now, dealing with China, Indonesia, and if, and depending on the election, the next election in Malaysia, the axis Turkey-Malaysia could be very, very powerful in the coming years. So what we have now is something that has to do with what they are acknowledging and what they are supporting, and am I still in my time? Or not? I'm taking too much time. It's 5 minutes? Someone said it to me this afternoon and I took half an hour, so don't say it again. I will just try to take 5 minutes just to raise the point. So this is beyond the polarization to come to a discussion about the nature of the state, the civil state, because I think that there is an agreement on the civil state. Now, we should have people coming from the two sides, so to speak, and to work together. This should be the future, and not to end up with this polarization based on your reference, which is today missing. And even the people in Tunisia, they are not able to go beyond these tensions now, because it's quite troubling and disturbing the dynamics within the society. The second challenge that we have to talk about is this challenge which is everywhere in all the countries, but in these countries today much more challenging, is corruption. No democratization if we have this level of corruption. What is proposed to deal with corruption and to change the country? We heard recently Morsi saying, I didn't know it was so huge within the country. And it is. In Egypt it is. Corruption is everywhere. And it's everywhere in Tunisia. So how do you deal with this? And if you want to deal with corruption in all these countries, you have to touch very sensitive power. And the first one is the army. And we have to deal with this. No democratic process if you don't deal with the army. And as you have seen, in Egypt today, there is an agreement not to touch the army. and the army is apparently absent in Tunisia. But it's everywhere in Syria, in Libya, in Tunisia, in Egypt. We have to deal with it. Democratization is where is the army in the civil state and in the picture. And this is one of the main challenges. The fourth one is the economic stability. And what I was saying, once again, it's very important. Which type of economic system and models are you going to promote? The good news for some people is now the Islamists are buying the free market and neoliberal system, which was not the case for some of them in the past, but now they are buying it and they are involved in this, and we can see this with Erdogan. And very often the Islamists, when they are capitalists, they are welcome. If you are an Islamist capitalist, that's fine. Be conservative, do whatever you want in your private life, but be in the market, that's okay. And this is where we don't see anything which is an alternative economic system or an alternative to South-South relationship. And the only way, there is no, all this business about an Islamic economy, I don't buy this, I don't think that there is an Islamic economy. I think that there are Islamic principles in economy as much as they have Christian or atheist or human values, that we need more ethics in economy. That's what we have to come together, and we have to say we need ethics in economy. But having said that, now, in this world, with this global economy, we need to find new partners. And to deal with, to idealize the Chinese capitalism is not going to help us. Because very often the Chinese capitalism is capitalism minus human rights minus democratic system. So this is to be very efficient with no rights for the people. When you send your prisoners to go and to work for people in Africa and you see what is happening in Africa with the Chinese presence, you can be scared. It's scary. It's a very scary system, but very powerful. If you deal with the current global system, you need to have different partners to live in this multipolar world, to find a way. It's not coming from what we hear in the Middle East now. Two other challenges, or maybe three other challenges. There is something which is important. There will be no real democratization if there is no investment in education. Education is critical. All the educational systems in the Arab world are collapsing. And once again, when some people, I'm very much promoting, because I saw this, it's there, the instrumental role of women in all the process, everywhere. And it's going to be one of the key factors of this change there. But once again, when we listen to what is said in the West, that be careful with what is happening in the Middle East, because the women are going to be more veiled, so it's this Islamization of the society. This kind of attitude by saying, oh, they are becoming backward, we are regressing because they wear the headscarf, say, stop it. What are you talking about? Do you assess the liberation of women on the way they dress? No. That's not the point. That's not the point. And I keep on repeating, two things are important when we talk about empowerment of women in any society. First, access to education. And in the Middle East, it's a catastrophe in many countries. In all the North African countries, the rate is among the lower rates of education for women, except for Tunisia, because of what was done by the regime which was imposing this. This was the only thing which was imposed which was positive. And the second thing is opportunities in the job market. And I mean this, which means that to be able to get this autonomy to work and to be also respected as men should be respected. And, we still have to do a lot in Canada, by the way. Same skill, same salary. We are far from this. But in the Muslim majority countries, this is where we are going to talk about liberation and empowerment of women. This is what is done in this? Not so much. We are not talking about this enough. about this process that has to do with education, and then connected to this social justice. And social justice is a bottom-up strategy. We have struggles at the top and no social justice and a social policy or social policies at the grassroots level. And I would say something that it's the last point, and I keep on repeating this when it comes to the new Middle East. If you look at the Arab world, it's not true to think that they are only facing a political crisis because there is no democracy. It's not right to think they are facing economic crisis because there is no economic stability. One other big crisis that the Arab world is facing today is a cultural crisis. Lack of literature, lack of creativity, lack of artistic production. You can't talk about stabilized democracy if you are not promoting well-being in cultural terms. And cultural terms is you look at yourself and you're happy with what you are producing in artistic and imagination terms. Imagination is something which is the narrative. The narrative, it's important. And we are celebrating the past, but we are not producing anything in Islamic terms. It's not to come with, Islamic songs. No. It's just to produce literature, intelligence, science. These are things that are so important. And to celebrate the language in a positive way, or languages, and not to be colonized and at the same time feeling bad. Do you have a strategy coming with what is happening in the Middle East? Not enough. So with all these challenges, we can see that we are very far from this polarization. We are talking here about something which has to do with corruption, army, social justice, empowerment of women, culture, economic stability. These are the true challenges, and we need time for that. In 2 years, it cannot happen. So the people who are judging now by saying they are failing, they are unjust. It's not fair. But to be happy with what is happening without being critical, I think is not the way we are helping the Middle East to move on. And from where we are as you Canadian citizens, it's important to have an intellectual attitude, which is 3 things. Willing it or not, let the people decide what model they want to have, while at the same time never compromise on principles. Anyone who is going to tell you, in my culture, I can show a lack of respect towards the dignity of human beings, you should know, never. So your model is yours. Our principles are shared principles, and I'm going to stand up, and this is something which is important with what they are doing. Having said that, we also have to do the same and to be self-critical with our countries and our governments. If you want to support democracy there, ask your government here to be consistent with our values here. Because this business of thinking that the life of a Canadian citizen is more valuable than the life of an Arabs and the Muslims, that doesn't work. This is a lack of dignity on our side. So it's easy to support democracy sitting down, but when our governments are acting in another way, us, as Western citizens, we should stand up and say, no. Democracy for us is democracy for them. Dignity for us is the same dignity for them. In fact, it's human dignity that we are celebrating all together. And then with this consistency, being self-critical with ourselves and promoting, this is where we need to come now and to create links. It's the world of communication. We need to create links with the actors, sharing our views or not. But this connection with the true actors there is something which is an intellectual necessity to help this world to go and to move towards the right direction. Thank you.
Well, as we indicated at the beginning, Dr. Ramadan's graciously agreed to take questions. So for those of you that are here in Siegfried Hall, we have a microphone on each side. So if you have a question, I'll ask you to go to that microphone. For those of you in overflow, we will also receive your questions in this room. I do ask you please to be as concise and brief as possible so that we can get in as many questions as possible. Okay? We do not want to keep Dr. Ramadan here until too late tonight. He does have to travel again tomorrow. So thank you very much.
Okay, go ahead.
Professor Ramadan, thank you very much for this enlightening lecture, and congratulations. You always succeed in challenging us, in instigating questions and ideas. I think I agreed with most of the things that you said, but I disagree with the fact that there is no revolution. I think I grew up at times of fear in Syria when Hafez al-Assad was there, and what I saw in Egypt and Tunisia is revolution. I went there, recently, and I saw in Syria revolution. I think this we have to respect all those people who paid their lives in the line of freedom, and I think they are revolutionary people. I know that there are a lot of challenges. We have to know how to communicate with each other, whether are religious, whether we're non-religious, to build a new future and find solution. We know that the rest of the world is not a charity organization. We have to know how to deal with them, and they're looking for their interest. I think there's a lot of responsibility on us, but I think there was a revolution, and there is a revolution.
Okay, so we can talk about words and the way we qualify what is happening. It's not because you have revolutionary people in the street that what they are achieving is a revolution. It's not. You can come with a revolution mind and then what you are achieving is not. Depending on what was before, in which way things are happening, and what was really changing within the regime. Unfortunately, my take on this is, if I look at what is happening now, we can't talk about revolutions. I don't see. Now, you can say, yes, and the last point that I wanted to make is, don't get me wrong, because I heard this very many times. They say, if you don't think that there are revolutions, we are not respecting enough the people who were killed for. No, it's, not only I'm supporting, not only I'm celebrating, and not only I trust the people. Now, trusting the people doesn't mean to be naive as to what is happening. This is my only point. So this is why I'm cautious with the concept of revolution. But
the wall of fear was actually...
This is, if you heard me, I said intellectual revolution happened. Political revolution still to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Can you speak? Yes.
I just find it a little bit interesting that with all the Arab awakenings that are taking place, that Israel was never mentioned, or wasn't mentioned. I'm not sure. I find it interesting to see how the West would be okay with or planning or plotting or whatever, like the changes in the Middle East or democratizing the Middle East when major allies of the state of Israel are toppled down. And I don't see how basically the West's interest in the Middle East is purely economic, and or how do you equate that with the interest in Israel and its security? How do you? I find it they're not equal. Maybe Israel is more. I'm not sure, but I don't want to quantify it. But I just find it interesting how it is in the interest of the West to see the best ally of the West in the Middle East, Hosni Mubarak basically being toppled down, and likewise, like right now, now we have basically Egypt's gone, revolution could happen in Jordan, who knows, Syria is down. So how is that democratization going to help in that aspect?
Okay. You are right. This evening I mentioned, I think, once Palestine and Israel and not more. And you're right that in the challenges in the region, the conflict, the Palestinian-Israeli conflict, we have to tackle this because it's a critical question. The first thing that I wanted to say is, in the whole process of what we call the Arab Spring, the people who were completely forgotten in the whole process were the Palestinians. And it's as if we are talking about all the other countries and the Palestinians are still under occupation and nothing is changing. And it happened, you know, this attack against Gaza and the agreement that was signed with the Egyptian president protecting the Palestinian for a while. But I think that it's a central issue that is not tackled. Was not tackled, but we have to. The second thing that we have to mention is one of the deals that was put to the elected Islamists was mainly to take a position, a clear position on what are you going to do with the agreement with Israel. So Morsi, as much as Ennahda in Tunisia, they made it clear they are not going to question the agreement, the peace agreement between their country or between another country, in this, the case of Tunisia, and Israel. So this is something that has had to be secured, as we are going to deal with you if you acknowledge the fact that there were agreement and you are not going to question this agreement, this peace agreement, or so-called peace agreement, because many of the points in these peace agreements are not even respected by Israel if we go to the ground and try to assess the situation in the ground. So this is the second point. The third point is exactly what I was saying in economic terms. In fact, China and Russia and India and South Africa, you know what, it's not, we are not saying this enough, but Nelson Mandela, when he was the president, because of what he experienced himself, you know that before he was a terrorist, and then he was celebrated as a great man, a respectable man, by the same people who accepted him to be in jail for 25 years. He said himself that he is a supporter of the Palestinian and he wants to talk to the people who are elected, for example, Hamas and others. He said, they are most welcome here. And the South African country, and you heard the position they took towards Israel by saying we are ready to boycott if nothing is done to respect the Palestinians. South Africa, all the Southeast countries, and then in the Middle East, the support towards the Palestinian or the relationship between China and the Palestinians. And you remember in 2008, when they had an international conference in China, they invited the leader of Hamas. And they were very much criticized by the Americans, and they responded to Americans, we deal with the elected people. They were elected, we invite them. At the end, the point is this one, is if there is a shift in economic terms or in political terms towards the East, it's very problematic for Israel, because they don't have the same protection with China, India, than they have with America and the United States and the European countries. So it's very critical what is happening in the Middle East. So add to this, and this is my last point, that the destabilized Syria and the destabilized Middle East is now a kind of informal and formal protection for its policy within and the protection from outside. All these destabilized countries cannot do anything against Israel today. They can't. So at the end, you can see that it's instrumental, and slowly, day by day and months after months, this two-state solution is dying. It's dying. It's not going to happen. All the people who are visiting, they are saying and coming back and say, that's over. It's not going to happen. So I think that this is why we have to take this into account and talk about this. And once I was hoping in the book I wrote an article that we will see an Israeli spring. People from within standing and being able to say that's enough. What is done in the name of the state of Israel is not acceptable. It's not going to happen now. But I think your question is a very important one. I have to, yes, sorry. Yes.
I have a question from the classroom upstairs. What do you think about the situation in Somalia?
Yes, we cannot talk about everything, and it's a very long situation. The situation, once again, here, it's scattered. The Islamist movements from within, there are tensions there, and there is a complete lack of political stability. So what is happening today is, once again, some of the geostrategic interests, because Somalia in geostrategic terms it's important, and what we have is, again, we can add to the list this political instability protecting the geostrategic interest in the region, and this is something which, once again, it's the translation of what I was trying to say. Now, we also have to deal with trends. And I think that Somalia sent us a message that we have to listen to now, and especially for what I call the contemporary Muslim conscience. We can't carry on just witnessing what is happening and what is said in the name of Islam by some trends and keep quiet. It's important now for some to be able to say two things. To have a principled position. In Somalia, this was the starting point of something which is a recent phenomenon, but it's very much on the ground, is to say, look, Islam is going to be a reference for the Muslim majority countries. You can't avoid that. But within and from this principle, we should acknowledge the fact that there are many interpretations. Some interpretations are legalist and reformist. Some others are literalists, and that's fine. And some others are violent and acting against the very essence of Islam. On this, we should say, this is not Islamic. So we should be clear on what is within and what is outside. And I think that we are not doing this enough, because we are scared of what is going to be said and in which way it's going to be perceived. So in Somalia, this is the good example.
Assalamu alaikum. I have two questions that I wish to address to you. So the first question is that, do you think it would be more possible for Muslim-dominant or predominant countries to aim for a more theocratic state than a democratic state? And my second question is that you talked about how you don't believe that foreign intervention is sort of the best answer for Syria. So if not foreign intervention, what else?
Okay, good question. No, I don't think that we are heading towards more theocratic states. I think that it might be the opposite. I think that the Iranian experience with people now from within the system, the reformists within the system, are now criticizing the system from within, and they want this to be moved, even the Islamic Republic of Iran. And, I'm on the side of the reformist, and I am resisting what is done by the current government. And I think that from within we see people challenging this. And I can't, and I think it's wrong to say and to accept this rhetoric by some analysts saying, the Muslim Brotherhood and the Nahda and even the people in Morocco, Al-Adala wa Tanmiya, justice and development, they are promoting more the theocratic. No, they are not. That's not. We may disagree with the kind of state they want or the kind of model, but it has nothing to do with theocracy. And it's really, I think that what they are showing now, that they are playing the democratic rules. So let us see what is going to happen. But to decide before they are engaged and translating something into the ground after 2 years that it's over, I think it's not fair. This is a judgment that it's not consistent with what politics is and time which is needed. The second question about what else in Syria, this is where exactly I think we are. I don't want, you know, when I was in Tunisia and I was talking to the president was telling me, you know, we are trying to find an agreement to get out of this situation. And for example, you're saying we have a problem with Qatar because they want to give weapons to the resistance. It's as if they want to promote a civil war from within. I think that we have to avoid something like this because it's going to last for a very long time. And my suggestion and my perception is to have a kind of a strategy that is putting some pressure and more pressure to make it possible or to make it necessary for the president to leave. And this is possible if there is a political will to try to isolate the country and to go for this. Once again, difficult also because there are two countries, Russia and China, they are not ready to do this. But I don't think that we should promote a military intervention. But I'm not sure even which type of alternative we have, knowing that if there is a political will by the Western governments, they can make it and they can push the situation towards an end. But this is not the decision. Now the decision is let them find a solution from within, even if they have to go towards a civil war.
Thank you.
Mohammed Abulaz, Imam of Kitchener Masjid, and we really welcome you here.
Thank you.
We especially hope to have you in our community, especially for us, a special meeting. But we didn't make
You don't want to share me.
But anyway, I have a question on you. Based on what you said, that the American pushed or the American administration pushed for the revolution or for the awakening or for democratizing the Arabs. I mean, they were do you think that they were expecting that the Muslim Brotherhood or the Islamists are going to be in the power and they knew that how they are going to deal with them? And they were expecting someone else maybe, so, but now they are in a different scenario. And another question, what do you think that the Muslim Brotherhood, do you think they are doing well till now?
Yeah.
The Muslim Brotherhood now, they came in power since after overthrowing Mubarak. Do you think they are doing well till now, or they are not able, or they were not ready for that? Because there is a big opposition now against them in Egypt. Or do you think Akhwan al-Dawla putting their followers in the states? This sometimes I believe it's false accusation to some extent. It's not completely true, but some people, a lot of Sudanese that I met here, they say that we fear Egypt will come to our example, the example of the Muslim Brotherhood in Sudan. So they say, we don't want you to repeat the same Tagroba of Sudan.
Okay.
What do you think about Sudan and Egypt and the first question? Thank you.
Thank you. The first question about this was about they were pushing and they were expecting or not the Islamists. I think the point once again was not really about the political system. It's much more about regaining the market, whatever is the political situation. But now, as you said, the relationship with who is going to lead was important. What we know, you know, the American administration and the European administration, they haven't discovered who were the Ikhwan over the last 2 years. They have been studying them, dealing with them over the last 60 years. Even Hassan al-Banna, before he was killed, 2 years before he was killed, he was mentioning France, Britain, and the United States as being involved in the fact that his organization was prevented from being officially recognized or at least targeted. This was in the 40s. So exactly the same with Tunisia and in Nahda, and exactly the same with Morocco. I can tell you something which is quite interesting. I heard and I knew before the Moroccan election that the Islamists were going to win the election, because the special advisor to the king, Mohammed VI, told me they are going to win. What does it mean? It means that today, the fact that to push towards more open democratic forces, if it's to deal with the Islamists, the most important thing is to have 3 questions answered. And then when I was with an American advisor to the American government, was telling me, in fact, for the Americans, 3 things are important in the Middle East for the state: oil, security, and Israel. If you look at the way they are dealing with the Islamists, oil is not in danger, security, they are doing the job, and Israel, they don't touch it. They can do whatever they want as long as the geostrategic interest. So I don't see any danger now for the United States with the Muslim Brotherhood being in charge or in Nahda, because in economic terms they are accepting. Does it mean that they were pushed and supported? No. But to deal with them, it's not a problem, as long as there are some boundaries not to be touched and some topics not to be discussed and not to be challenged. This is my position on this now, and I think the problem that I have now with many of the Islamist trends is that they want so much to be recognized as legitimate political forces that they are compromising on many, many things. And the first one is the economic system. When you are so much obsessed with, oh, now we made it, now we are in power, and you want to be acknowledged as true partners, this is where you can enter into, dealings which could be compromising in a way. So are the Muslim Brotherhood or in Nahda quite clear on this? There is a question mark. I think we all need time to see what is going to happen. And this is the second thing that you were saying and asking. All this type of very quick judgment, they are not delivering, they are not doing anything, I think is not fair. From the very beginning, I was very critical. And to tell you the truth, my position on this, it should have been better for them not to be elected and not to run for presidency. This is my position. I think it was wrong to do this. Now, they are there. They are criticized by many trends, and some of the criticism are completely unjust because you can't change the country. But some others are right. They are the way they deal with, some of the issues that I was mentioning. We have to be critical on this, and this is not right. It's difficult, but there are mistakes made, and this is important to be raised. Now, are they doing good? I think that it's difficult in this situation to do good, and I don't see anything on the many fields that I'm talking about, on corruption, the army. I'm sorry. If you are true to democracy and you are dealing with the army, and especially in Egypt, this army should be held accountable. These people killed, these people cheated, these people are at the top corrupt, and they are free. I don't see anything going towards democracy if you accept that. I can't accept myself. If you have a principled position, I have a problem with this.
So the question in the classroom, and you may have touched on this a little bit already, is when you said people about Egypt people are against a dictator but not united after the revolution happened, and people cannot ask for democracy while they are missing education. And you forget that who sparked the revolution were the mid-high class people who are well educated and have wealth. Does that mean we have to support the Muslim Brotherhood and their way of running the country in Egypt?
I don't see the relationship between the first part and the second part, but what I can say here is we're not talking about the same thing. The fact that there is a movement of people who are educated against the dictator and, middle class educated people, that's true. This is what happened in fact. But when we are dealing with the future and we are talking about not being against in the streets, because it's very difficult to be courageous and it's very difficult to mobilize the people, and it was done, and this is great, and we have to celebrate this. Once again, we have to put our trust in the power of people resisting dictators. But it's another discussion when it comes to build the country, to build a country based on democratic processes. And this is where we are not only dealing with students and educated people, we are talking about ordinary citizens, and these ordinary citizens should get education. Because if you are not educated, and by the way, even if you are educated, what we can see today is one of the greatest dangers that we are all facing, and even the West, and even Canada, is populism. And populism is politics without ideology. It's populism based on emotion, is what I call emotional politics. Is the ideology of emotions where you are pushing the people and building. And we have this. We can end up having religious populism. Religious populism is to use religion and to use and to play with the emotions of the people. This is where we are. So I think that how are you going to resist your emotions is through education. And not only. Because even in educated society, like in, I'm a Swiss citizen. And I saw something which was, up to now, it's very scary. I live in a society and I have, 44 years of my life, I spend them in Switzerland. Switzerland is a highly educated society. And in my society, in my country, I'm a Swiss citizen, we have 4 minarets. And the leading party, 30%, it's called the UDC. They are far-right populist people. They succeeded in 6 months to change the vision of the people and to go as far as to change the constitution and to have a referendum when it is said no minarets in the country because this is alien to our society. And we have only 4. If one party could play with the fears of the Swiss people, who are very protected, and change the minds of the people in such a powerful way, what if the people are not educated? It's dangerous. We are all in danger. It's that if you are true Democrats, watch the populists. And this is my answer to this, is that we have to be more education and political understanding. And I keep on repeating, there will be no future if we don't deal with the past. And what is missing in all our educational system is not the fact that the people are not educated, it's to teach history. It's to teach history. There is a lack of memory. We are repeating the same mistakes, and this is dangerous. Yes?
I had the privilege of attending your lecture this morning, Dr. Ramadan, and the lecture today. And as youth, I was active in the revolution, and after this lecture, you outlined a lot of the problems or the events or challenges that happened in the last 3 years. You even referred to 2008, how there was a plan or a plot for the Arab awakening, or my concern is Egypt. As part of the youth that want to build or paint a brighter future for the Egyptian people, themselves. How can the youth come together or change when there's these driving forces against them, like these institutions, or like the democratizing of the Arab world? And it's even when they thought that they stood together in unity and had a revolution, now we know that, well, this is what was planned and plotted. So if their agenda is always there, how do we remove that agenda? And how do we paint a better future for the Egyptian children or my question is regard to Egypt, because that's what I know.
Yeah. Yes, it's a good question, but once again, it's to be aware of what politics is all about. And you know, I have only my own. You were there, and I have my own daughter. She spent 2 years, and for the 2 years, she was every day. I was even telling her, "Please stay at home. It's dangerous." And she told me, "This is not the way you educated me." So the right answer for a scared father. But I think that what I saw in her and what I saw in people who were there, it's this energy, this was deep, and there were hope, and there is still hope. Now, the most dangerous thing is to put one's hope into something which is a simplistic understanding of what politics is. So hope with understanding. So the best way for me is what I'm saying is to have a better understanding, a better knowledge about history, the way forces are playing. And you know, some cyber dissidents, and I read some of the Tunisian and Egyptian people, they were saying they knew that they were getting money from institutions. They say we have to be very careful. We might take the money, but we have to remain autonomous in our assessment. And once again, they were aware that there was something happening. They were pushed, but this is why you can take money. You can be trained. Now, these are but means. Now you have to set the goals. So between what you take and where you go, this is where you have your political conscience. And this is what the youth should do. Not only the youth, every citizen should do this. It's to understand which means and what are our objectives. And not to lose hope. I'm not saying that everything was under control and everything was planned and it's a plot. No, I'm not saying this. I think there is a push and now we can direct. So this is what, you know, in my way of dealing with things is we should become the subject of our history. The subject of our history is to create this awareness, this conscience, and to decide where we go. But you know, to do this is to have hope and to nurture this hope, but it's to add two things that are important: knowledge and understanding, and courage. These are two things that are necessary to change the situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, good evening, Dr. Ramdan, and thank you so much. My name is Doris Jacobs. I'm in the Department of Religious Studies here at the University of Waterloo. I have a question that is about semantics, and it has to do with this entity, this nebulous place that we call the West. And I find one of the lovely things about your lecture was to show the complexity, the nuances of the situation in the Middle East. And is it not time to start asking all of us who are within academia, who are looking at these very complex questions, to also start defining what the West is? Are all of us here, because we pay taxes to the Canadian government, are we the West? Are you the West as a Swiss citizen? What is the West? And we've already understood that we have to be very careful when we're talking about the East. Edward Said made that clear to us many years ago already, and I think we have learned. And I just wondered if you could comment about that.
I agree with you.
Good.
That's good.
No. Let me finish my sentence. Some people are saying, I agree with you, but, and some are saying, I agree with you, not completely. I agree with you that we have to, what you are saying is we have to define the words and the concept, and we have to be clearer as to our terminology. And on this, I think that even in the West and in the East. By the way, in the book, I'm also challenging and being quite critical with, in fact, not the essence of Edward Said's thesis, but the way he himself was trapped within the thesis when he was talking about Islam. In fact, he's saying the West is projecting onto Islam something which Islam is not, but they are there. We can find in Islam good people. And the good people he's going to take from the Islamic reference are the people who are very much what the West likes. So you'd say, oh, there is a problem here. The equation is wrong. And all the people that he's saying, oh, listen to this guy, listen to this, these are all people that the West say, well, yes, we are listening to them. So in fact, okay, just to make it clear that we have to be even critical with the implementation of some of the thing. As to the West, I think that we have to define it's a geographical entity, but it's more than that. And I would say that when you travel around the world and you see what the kind of the mindset and the principles and some of the perception that we have are the self-perception in North American countries, Canada and the States, in European countries. Of course, there are lots of differences, but they are features that are common to the geographical entity when it comes to values and when it comes to the perception of the East, for example, and others. You can find also this in Australia, not exactly the same, but you have common features in the way we understand ourselves and in the way we project onto the others. So I would say it's not only a geographical entity, and all the people who are saying West versus Islam. Islam is a religion and the West is a geographic entity, which I think is wrong. It's not what we are talking about. And Islam with a capital I, in French we have a difference between a capital and the small one. It's the capital is the civilization, the other is the religion, which is not exactly what we have in English. But here, my take on what we are talking about is that we have to deconstruct the concept and not to accept it as it is, the West. But still, if you go deep in the collective psychology, we can find common features as to the way we deal with some of our values, some of our principles, the relationship that we can find between and the way we deal with authority and the way we deal with citizenship and the way we deal with rule of law, for example. Some of the principles you can find that there are things that are common, that we can at least discuss. So this is what I mean when I'm referring to this. My next book is called Our West. So I'm using the concept. But you know, the subtitle is Towards a New Narrative, which is the point. Towards a new narrative is what do we mean? What is the narrative in the West when we talk about being Western? But I think your question is a critical one.
I just want to make, we have a question in the back, and these will be 3 and 4 will be the last ones, okay?
So I have to be short.
Yes.
Yes?
So the question that we have is that you said that people in Islamic countries should get rid of the violent populations as not representing the true Islam. Would you also say that Canada and the USA, as predominantly Christian countries, should also get rid of violent factions such as the Army and the CIA?
You know that I have been banned already 6 years from the States. The one who is asking the question wants me to be banned once and for all. Anyway, I didn't say this exactly. What I said is, by the way, I want you to be very, very cautious with, we were talking about terminology, the way I'm putting things. I'm not talking about Muslim countries. I'm talking about Muslim majority countries. And every time you listen to me, it's maybe by mistake sometimes or because I'm in a hurry that I say Muslim countries, but my take is Muslim majority countries. In these Muslim majority countries, we have some interpretation of people who are using Islam in a way which is justifying acts and actions that are not only non-Islamic, they are anti-Islamic. And it's for the Muslims to stand up and to say no. For example, I was very much against the French intervention in northern Mali. Because this was 5 years ago, this started from the very beginning, when it started 5 years ago, my position was on the people who were implementing the so-called Sharia in the way they were doing. This is not acceptable. This is not my religion. And the Muslims should stand up and say, no, that's not acceptable. So this is what I am saying. Now, when it comes to what is happening in the United States of America and in Canada, I'm sorry. Now let us talk to one another here in this room. And it's us. This is our West and our country and our way of dealing with the government. If you are a true citizen, if you have values and principles, and you don't speak out when you know that your government is indulging in extraordinary rendition and torture, and that you know that in this country today you have people in jail, they don't know why they are in jail, and it is called preemptive procedure, meaning that you went on a website, you were watching YouTube or something which is a video which is a potential terrorist thing, and you can end up in jail because you are labeled as potential terrorists. If this is happening and we as citizens, we accept this, it means that we are accepting second-class citizenship, human rights being undermined, and a lack of dignity in the policies of the country. And if the citizens are keeping quiet because they are scared, you know, very often the day after tomorrow and next week, I'm going to the States, and we'll also talk about some of the people who are under house arrest, and some are in solitary confinement. They don't know why, and it's not 1 week, it's not 2 weeks, and you know what the psychologists are saying. More than 2 weeks, you become crazy. It's 4 years. More than 2 weeks, your mind is going to lose control. 4 years in solidarity confinement. You know what I call this? This is torture. This is psychological torture, which is not acceptable. And if we want to talk about democracy in the Muslim majority countries and around the world, and we want to celebrate the values, let us start with ourselves and with our own contradictions. So the way, you know, you have seen this film. You watched the film which was about, you know, catching bin Laden. What was the name of the film?
Zero Dark.
Sorry? Zero Dark? 40. 30. So this is the 10th time I heard the title. I never remember. So in this, the controversy was about the fact that torture was institutionalized to get some information. And they keep on repeating always the same thing. If you have a terrorist and he knows about something that is going to happen, it's legitimate to torture him to get the information. This never happens. This never happens that, oh, I know something, a bomb is going to explode, we are going to torture you. We are using this in a way which is unacceptable. It's undignified to legitimize torture. And this is, I'm sorry, it's done in our countries, in Canada as much as in European countries and in the United States of America. So I have a question. It's good to come and to listen to an academic talk in evening, say, yes, good. He is a Democrat. Many people are coming to me after the lecture, oh, you are a Muslim Democrat, open-minded. That's fine. That's not the point. The point is, are you a courageous citizen? That's my question. Are you courageous enough to say to your country, what you are doing in my name, it's wrong? I will never accept torture, never accept extraordinary rendition, never accept that the only question you ask when you are using drones, like it happened in Yemen, is to ask, was it legitimate to kill this guy because he was an American citizen? So if it's not an American, you can? And if it's an American, you ask? But you kill because he is a terrorist? I think that this is where we should all come together in the name of our common principles and to be courageous citizens. So what I am saying about Muslims, to be self-critical, I would say to any human beings. If you are not, and by the way, your love towards your country, your loyalty towards your country is not to blindly support what the governments are doing. The only true love and patriotism to your country is to be critical and critically loyal to your country. You are right, I'm with you. You are wrong, you will find me. Because I am an aware and committed citizen to protect the principles. So I would say exactly the same. And the CIA and the FBI or any intelligence. Let me tell you one story, because just give me 5 minutes. No, very quickly. But just to tell you something, I'm a Swiss citizen. And you know what we heard in the Islamic Center where my brother is the director, just to tell you how things are done. Someone came, and we know now that it's happening everywhere in the United States, it's even happening in Canada. The people who are working for intelligence are coming into the communities and they are pretending to convert to Islam. They enter within the community to get the information and they can come back to the intelligence and give information. It happened to the Islamic Center in Geneva. The only thing was that he pretended to convert to Islam, he entered and he was supposed to put links into the computer of the Islamic Center to terrorist videos. Fortunately, in fact, his conversion to Islam ended up to be sincere. He was, it's a true story. It's a true story. It's in my family. He converted to Islam, and then he said, I'm doing something to this guy, and the only thing that I see in him is that he is respectful. And he came to him and said, I was sent to do this to you. And he made it public. Who sent this? Swiss intelligence. In fact, this is how the governments are dealing, pushing to create something that is going to justify the fact that we are targeting you. If you are citizens, you know this. If you are Democrats, we have to stand up together. And let me tell you something, what I'm saying now, it's not a Muslim business. It's as if I'm talking about racism against African people or black people. Any one of us here who think that racism is a black business and not our business, he is nurturing the same wrong understanding. It's all our business because we are talking about our future.
The transition between dictatorship and democracy in the East, it's very bloody and very not positive, let's just say. What is a proper transition? Like, what's something that you can close your eyes and say, okay, this is what I think should happen in order to solve this problem? Or should there be a transition at all?
No, I think that transition will happen, and there is no proper transition. It depends on the country and on the actors. So sometimes it's going to be bloody, and sometimes it's going to be peaceful, and sometimes it depends on what are the challenges. So far, we still had people being killed in Egypt or in Tunisia. And this is a transitory period. So I think that the starting was non-violent, but we need a transitory period. This is what we are witnessing now, hoping that it's not going to be more violent, and hoping that we'll find actors who are able to transform this resistance against the dictator towards something which is a promotion of a project, which is not now visible. But I don't have a pattern, I don't have something that I can refer to by saying this is the ideal transition. It depends on the country. Yes? Here, oh, sorry.
My question is, what's the importance of judiciary? Because many times we get coming from Pakistan, we get focused on political parties, that we sort of lose the importance of the institutions and building and aiming to build the institutions. So where would you locate judiciary and functional judicial system in our
I think that your question make it quite clear that it's an important factor in anything which has to do with democratization. This is the third power. And the third power, to remain a power, it should remain an independent power. So to protect the independence of judiciary, it's important. And when I'm talking about acting against corruption, this is one of the first sectors. We should avoid having these people working for the government or being corrupt from within the system. So if we are talking about democratization, the third power should be completely independent, with people who are able to do what they have to do and to judge all the people who were accountable and they were not delivering. So this is part of the action against corruption. Yes?
Dr. Tariq Ramadan, thank you for your insight this evening. Very powerful, adoptable, influential ideas. Could you please answer this following question?
I'm scared of the question after all what you said.
Well, there's a lot of hope involved, so I hope that you'll receive it well. I'd like to know, in the case that these major world superpowers continue to increase the competition that they have over the resources in the region of the Middle East, how can the means by which the institution of democracy is applied change? How can democracy's institutional means change to give the people more control over their own resources and more benefit from the sale of those resources?
It's a difficult one, how this could happen. I think that I can't see it happening if one country or the leaders of one country are thinking that they are going to achieve this on their own. The only way for me to come back and to take over or to take again the resources that you have within the country, this should be a transnational movement of resistance. This is why I'm advocating South-South relationship, to stop dealing, there is no North African country dealing with one another. Morocco is not talking and not collaborating with Algeria, but both are collaborating with France. So on your own, you are weak. But if you have a front, if something which is a new way of dealing with your neighbor and other countries in the south, this could be something that could help to change and to question this power which is imposed onto you in a bilateral relationship, which is what is happening now. So this it works, divide and rule works also in economic terms.
But it needs to be a project. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes, needs to be.
Thank you very much, first of all, and I will make it very simple. Just focusing on Syria situation, I actually refer to your speech when you were saying about the disturbance in the whole region, how that will benefit the let's say, the China or Russia from the disturbance in Syria, and connecting that to the situation with Israel. And we noticed, or we already know, about 42 years now, there is no conflict between Israel and Syria. It's a very safe, secure border. And we just heard about the wall that Israel now is building in Golan Heights. So how do you connect this to referring to what you were telling us?
This, the wall that is protecting Israel?
From that disturbance.
No, but
not to mention that the economy, like the whole budget of Syria, I think in 2007, it's about $10 billion. So from the economic wise and the disturbance to Israel, and during that 4 years, so what is the benefit of the international community to have that disturbance in that region?
Oh, lots of things. And all this kind of walls and protection, this is something that you have to relativize in the light of the big picture. Now, what you said first, what could be the interest of Russia and China having Syria? First, the kind of support that they still have with the regime is to support the regime and to stay with the regime because they have economic interest and they are helping to keep this relationship with Iran and Lebanon. So in fact, this destabilized region is keeping China very much instrumental in anything which has to do with Iran, with Lebanon, with Syria, and in the region, because the fragile situation is still making China very much needed in the region. And as I told you, over the last 7 years, they multiplied by 8 their presence, and they are carrying on. They are continuing the process. So it's benefits, it's profits for them. It's beneficial, unfortunately. And in Russia, it's exactly the same. They are still very, very much dealing in economic terms. And we heard this recently about even weapons and arms. It's money. It's business.
It's $10 billion budget for the Syrian government.
So what?
It's very little amount of money comparing to other countries.
No, but it's not only about getting the money, is to sell weapons and to keep the geostrategic interest protected by this. This is what I'm talking about. The second thing that you are saying about Israel and the way they are dealing with building a wall and all this, this is something which is very marginal as to the reality in the region. If you look at all what happened, who were the countries that were apparently showing the more important resistance to the Israeli strategy in the region? When, for example, Netanyahu was saying the danger for peace in the region is Iran, he was targeting Iran. Syria, and I completely agree with Noam Chomsky, when he said, and I quoted him in the book, he was saying, in fact, if you look at Syria, they never really did anything against Israel. They are very powerful in words, verbally. But in political, they were attacked, they didn't react. And they are very tough in words, but nothing in action. So they were very useful to have, a government that is talking like this. But now what is weakened in the whole process? All the movement of resistance coming from Hezbollah, who resisted Israel in 2006, Iran and Syria now more than before, it's very fragile. So for the strategy of Israel within the domestic strategy, they have now all the countries around. Egypt is very weak. All this region is weak. Yemen, don't talk about it. Jordan, he is in trouble, so he's trying to deal with the opposition. So all these countries are in a very fragile situation. So it means that the strategy within that Israel has been planning step by step is something that they are realizing now. So I don't see anything that is preventing them from doing this. That's where I think we can get a key as to what is happening in the region. One of the keys, by the way, because I think we have to be, once again, connect all what we are saying here with the whole picture. Okay. Sorry? Okay, thank you.
Have a seat. I'd like to invite forward Dr. Idrissa Pandit. She is the Director of the Studies in Islam program here at the University of Waterloo, and I'd ask her please to formally thank our speaker on our behalf.
Good evening, and thank you, Christina, for this opportunity to thank Professor Ramadan. It is indeed an honor. Professor Ramadan, you've given us a lot to think about and reflect upon. I have listened to your speeches several times and read many of your works. When I hear you and when I read what you write, you remind me of many Muslim reformers of the 19th and 20th century. In particular, your lecture tonight brings to mind the great poet, philosopher of the East, Allama Iqbal. Just as Iqbal, through his works, created an awareness and awakened the human spirit, your writings and speeches do the same. just like Iqbal of the early 20th century, instead of lamenting the lost glory of Muslims through complaint, you urge the community to awaken its spirit through action. You remind the Muslim community to live the message of social justice of the Quran and the Prophet, and to work for restoring everyone's human dignity and honor. Instead of victimhood, you ask Muslims to claim their rightful place in the modern world as equal partners with the rest of humanity, engaged in struggles of justice, equity, and peace. You once again remind me of Iqbal, who defined an ideal human as one who exists in relation to the community. In his words, alone is nothing. The wave exists in the river. Outside the river, it is nothing. Tonight, and in all your writings, you urge us to embrace Tawheed, oneness of God, and to understand its true meaning with our hearts and minds, to create peace within ourselves first, and work for peace in the world. You issue a call to the Muslim community to become muhsineen, people who embrace excellence and beauty, and to reject anything that can become a source of pain and corruption. Once again, I think Allama Iqbal's words on what an ideal human should be capture the essence of your talk. I will spare you the Urdu and Farsi. Here's what it is in English. Create if thou art alive. Seize like me the sky with your hands. How long will you beg light like Moses on Mount Sinai? Let a flame similar to that of the burning bush leap out of your being. Break to pieces whatever is not worthy of thee. Shape a new world drawn from the depths of your being. Professor Ramadan, tonight you have challenged us towards this movement, dynamism, creativity, hope, courage, and responsibility, not passive contemplation and mere complaint. Thanks for challenging our thinking on the Arab awakening and helping us to frame the right and strong questions, other than what the popular media and the powers that be feed us. Professor Ramadan emphasizes the importance of upholding ethical principles over pragmatism, equity over prejudice, and to stand up against all divisive forces and policies of both people and governments. Thank you. Thank you very much for urging us to move on, and we're really grateful for your presence here tonight.
Thank you, Teresa. A couple of more things before we finish up. First of all, I wanted to thank the Spalding family for their support of tonight's lecture. We're very grateful to them for their commitment to helping to provide events like tonight. A reminder to you that you can sign up in our foyer if you want to receive more information about this lecture series and emails about upcoming speakers. St. Jerome's University is pleased to present these programs of speakers to our community every year, and we're able to do so to the community at no cost, thanks to the generosity of partners and supporters. If you would like to support the lectures, there are donation envelopes available in the foyer, and thank you very much to all who give so generously to us. At the far end of the hall, there are some wonderful fairly traded products available for sale by the Social Justice Committee here at the university. In the room just at the back of the main hall, Wordsworth Books is here and has Dr. Ramadan's books. And Dr. Ramadan has graciously agreed to sign the books, and he will be in that room as well. So easy for you to go to purchase a book and to move, and he will sign it. And it's a chance to say hello, of course. Finally, to let you know that our next lecture in the series will take place on Friday, April the 12th. We're happy to have with us Cardinal Thomas Collins, Archbishop of Toronto and a graduate of St. Jerome's University. He will be here to talk on educating the whole person, our hopes for Catholic education. And this is a lecture that's sponsored by our local Waterloo Catholic District School Board. We are expecting, as we did for this evening, a large number of people at this lecture, so we are going to ask people to reserve a seat. We expect that he may have some things to tell us about the relationship between conclaves, new popes, and so on, to our hopes for Catholic education. So there is a sign-up sheet if you're interested in reserving a seat for that lecture. Those who are on our mailing list, we will provide you with a reservation form when we send you the reminder electronically. Certainly hope that you will enjoy us for what I think will be a very engaging talk. So finally, I want to thank you so very much for coming this evening, for your attention and your patience and your concern and your willingness to be here. I wish you all a safe trip home, and until next time, good night.